Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico is, man, what a trooper. Mate, he's got some of probably the worst man flu that anyone's ever had, yet he is still rocked up. That's how committed he is to this podcast and how committed he is to men's mental health. Nico, look, on your deathbed,
literally in my deathbed,
with a roll of toilet paper next to you, but here you are.
Um, you just got to turn up. It's just people talk about free will, and yes, we do to some extent, but I really had no choice. The show must go on. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's probably the worst man flu in the history of mankind and existence. But I'm here. I'm not quite flying a full flag today, but I'm gonna bring the heat.
You bring the heat. Quality over quantity from Nico today. And that's good because I'm kind of sick of you talking. And plus, we have a great guest on today, which I'm very, very excited to talk to, and that's James Grima from Man Online. James, welcome to the show.
Ryan, Nick, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, and well done, Nick, for turning up even though you're not flying the full flag today.
See, this is why blokes need to support blokes. Women just don't understand what we're going through and the severity of a man flu, and this is why Man Online is so important, James. And we just need the brethren. We need to be there for each other and get around each other a bit more.
I feel like it'd be complete if you were in like an animal onesie or something. That'd make it perfect. James, no, that's it. I'm not talking about your man flu anymore. That's enough for the show. James, very excited to have you on today. I want to talk about obviously Man Online because we are a mental health podcast, but I love hearing about also people's journey. Like, I had a bit of a read of your bio and I'm like, okay, this is a guy who started a pizza store in his 20s, which became the chain Pizza Lovers, which I was a frequent at, let me tell you. Then started a training solutions program, which looks like it was sold to companies like McDonald's, KFC, and that kind of thing. And then also stepping into the space of, being passionate about helping other business owners in their business to now saying, hey, I want to now start to dedicate a portion of my life to helping men with their mental health. And I love to sort of hear a bit about your journey as to why. Before we get into the what Man Online is, I'd really love to know the why and where this passion and drive comes from.
Well, you've certainly done your research, and
I'm shocked. I'm disappointed. I'm discombobulated, James.
I knew that you had the flu, and I'm like, I've got to do something. I'm going to have to carry this show today, so I'm doing homework.
How dare you research a guest? You've changed.
Well,
man.
yeah, it all started back with pizzas, and I love pizza. Right, so as an 18-year-old bloke, when I first got my driver's license, I thought, what better a place to work than a pizza delivery joint, and somewhere where I could get out in the car and just kind of drive around. It was very freeing. But yeah, pizza in my 20s, a training company in my 30s, coaching in my 40s, and how I got into this men's work, I guess. Really came from the coaching component. So business owners, male business owners specifically that I'm referring to, so helping them with their business, with their marketing, with how, growing their business. And typically within a couple of months, every single male business owner at some point in time would say, would it be okay today if we talked about something more personal than my business? And they would raise issues. They talk about the whole suite of stuff that goes on for blokes, anything from purpose through to addictions, through to I don't know why I'm feeling this way, and all that sort of stuff. And if I look back across the client list, it'd be 1,000 blokes over 10 years that would have, you could set your clock to it. A couple of months in, they'd say, yeah, can I talk to you about something, and something personal? And and I thought to myself, I was one of those blokes who really needed to speak to someone, and I made the crucial mistake of not talking to someone, not putting my hand up, not saying, can I, to another bloke, can I talk to you about something? Can I share something with you? So I was really proud of these blokes for doing that. And then as sort of time went by, I thought, well, there's so many men that have stuff that they want to talk about. What could be a forum for that? And as we know, men's groups are certainly nothing new. But men's groups are a really great place for men to be able to support other men and listen and kick back and provide advice. So that really led to what exists today, which is Man Online. The MAN is an acronym. It stands for Men's Accountability Network. Sounds pretty formal, but really it's just a place for men to gather. It's for men by men and just talking about men's stuff. So that's how it got here.
It sounds like with them opening up to I think it's a real, says a lot about you too, James, and that they felt that rapport and that trust, and you're obviously holding some sort of space for them where they felt they could be vulnerable and share their stuff. So well done on giving them that as well, which was probably unknown at the time.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That's very true. Anyone that says men don't talk are wrong. They do. They have a lot to say, actually. And when the space is right, when there's a trust level there, and I'll make up that it's probably got to do with our DNA. Hundreds of thousands of years of protecting a perimeter, providing and protecting, and not wanting to show a chink in your armor, because maybe if you did, you were not trusted in the group, and maybe we've brought that forward into modern day. And so, for men, it's I think typically it's quite a hard thing to do, to let your guard down. We do want to be vulnerable. We do want to speak about what's going on for us. And it's hard for us as blokes to find a forum or find a person that we can actually sort of just share openly with what's going on, and to be able to get good feedback and good advice on what could be the step forward.
Yeah, and it's like exactly what you said. Men want to talk, and Nick and I all know this from being practitioners for a while, or can be in a men's group. It's like once that pressure relief valve gets let off, men will just woof, it'll all come out, and then maybe to a lot of their friends and their family, they don't talk and don't have much to say, but there's a lot in there to say. Like you said, though, it's about finding that safe space where someone feels safe enough to be able to do that. And it's an interesting point that you brought up about the perimeter of the tribe. I mean, it's a combination of many things, right? I'm sure it's genetic, it's cultural, it's the programming we had in the home in the early years. One I heard around that similar kind of tribe thing was obviously men would be out hunting, and a group of men would go out, and like the guy who was loud and talking, that wasn't a good thing when you're out hunting. Shh, shh, like quiet. You can scare away our fucking food, and we need that food. So that could be a genetic component as well. And I think there's a lot of things that go into it. When you say men's accountability network, like what are we keeping men accountable to here? Accountable to showing up, accountable to opening up? Like what are they accountable to?
Well, I guess first and foremost, accountable to themselves really is the goal. Growing forward by taking responsibility for their own actions, their own thoughts, their own beliefs, being comfortable with who they are. Each individual group, these groups meet twice a month online. They're groups of men. The group size is 6 to 8 men with a facilitator. When the men come together and make an agreement to be a group, the same group of men meeting ongoing, they'll actually determine their own set of rules and guidelines as to what being accountable means. For some groups, being accountable means being at every single meeting, no matter what, even if you're in bed with the flu. For some groups, it means that we recognize that family, clients, there's this whole balance of life. So if you're unable to make the group, at least text to the group and in advance and let them know that you're not going to be there so that the group knows that firstly you're okay, and secondly that it's going to be a bit of a smaller gathering for that evening. So the groups themselves, the men of the groups will determine what level of accountability they would like to have with each other. They agree to it, they commit to it, and then they step into it.
I don't know how much fuel in the tank I've got, so I'm just going to put a couple of things out there, and then I'll probably just peter off at the end. So, in the groups, as a mental health practitioner, I see a lot of awareness, which is wonderful. I see a lot of dialogue, which is great, but I'm not seeing a lot of educating, and I guess that's what we're really focused on and specialising in. So, with all the blokes in the group, is there somewhere for them to come in contact with information that can help them to affect change?
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that. So in my 30s, I ran a training organization, and so I have an education background. And what I saw in men's groups was there was this wonderful opportunity of bringing men together and having men open up and talk about what's going on. And the men's groups that I attended doing research and reconnaissance, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, it was an opportunity to have a discussion and to receive advice from other men, which is wonderful. And I thought that there was an opportunity on top of that for education, for awareness, for mental health literacy, physical health literacy. So within a Man Online session that runs for 90 minutes, typically in a men's group, you have a check-in, an opening round of shares. At the end of the session, you have a check-out, closing round of shares. And in the middle, we have an expert speaker that speaks to the theme of the topic. So our topics might be debt, they might be addictions, it might be stress, it might be anger, it might be work-life balance, it might be relationships with intimate partners, parenting, you name it, there's a different topic for each session. And that topic is then supported by an expert speaker who comes in, sometimes via a pre-recorded video, just for the nature of the intimacy of the groups, and will speak to a particular topic. So let's say it was stress. The expert speaker would speak to, here's 3 to 5 ways to be able to recognize your stress and then mitigate it so that you can move forward without stress becoming chronic or debilitating.
Mm.
So yeah, education I think is super important.
Yeah.
And if men can be more aware, more educated, we know that awareness precedes choice, precedes change. So I think education is really important in helping men to be even more aware of what's going on so that they can choose the changes that they personally choose for themselves.
Yeah, we talk about being an active participant in your own human experience. So not at Myndfit, not just outsourcing it, not just wanting other people to change us or fix us, but actually having that investment in looking after your own well-being. So it's interesting you talk about those 3 steps there. We've got 5 steps to change, and awareness is the first one, then acceptance, and then motivation are the first 3. And then I can't help anyone until they've ticked those off, and then comes the tools and increasing their capacity to change. So I had someone on LinkedIn, I'm never on there, but I did a presentation out at Pakenham the other week, and someone reached out and shared that Paddy Pimblett, what's his
Paddy the Baddie Pimblett, the UFC fighter.
Paddy Pimblett, and he had that. His mate committed suicide, very sadly, and he used his stage to speak about it, and she wanted my take on it, about how men need to speak up. And I said to her, I agree, but everything's easy in theory. Reality can often be much more difficult. because theory doesn't have an ego, a belief system, conditioning, mental filters, etc. And a lot of guys actually want to speak up. We just haven't done a good enough job of providing a safe space for them to do so. Many of my trader clients say they try talking to their mates, but get called soft, and to harden up, they try talking to their wives and girlfriends, but are told they are meant to be the rock in the relationship, or they get shut down, and that's invalidated, or they're not listened to. Or they try talking to their family, who just completely run over them as well, and tell them to stop complaining. So it's this interesting paradox where, yeah, let's encourage men to speak out, but I think we need to, as you're doing, thankfully, is creating this space for them to do that, and to be heard, and to encourage others around them to keep speaking as well.
And me and Nick are pumped about that you got the educational piece in there. That's why probably Nick asked the question, because we see, yeah, a lot of people it's just the awareness thing. And it's like, hey, we're aware of it now, but what can we do? And I love the fact that there's a topic. I mean, as a group, men can say, okay, well, there's a relationship topic, and then they can obviously share, hey, I implemented A, B, and C. I tried to communicate with my partner differently, and then share kind of how they did the next week, and realize that, you know, I can imagine in those groups, a lot of people sharing a lot of kind of, well, I tried this and I fucked up, or I tried that and I fucked up. But when you hear other people did as well, it's kind of okay. You don't feel like you're a fuck up so much to speak.
I'm not alone in this.
I'm not alone in this. Yeah. We expect unrealistically to be perfect at everything all the time. And when it comes to mental and emotional health, yeah, well, you are, Nick, but like the rest of us have to struggle with it.
I think a great tagline there is progress over perfection, right? And certainly that was good advice for me. But yeah, in terms of the education and the issues that men raise, once they're aware of something, so further to having an expert that presents material within Man Online that speaks to the topic, we also send out immediately after, well, immediately is within a few days after, a resource document. And the reason it takes a few days is that we gather all the questions that the men ask about that particular topic. For example, just last week, our topic was anxiety and depression. And men would honestly ask questions and say, I actually aren't 100% sure what depression is. I kind of know what it is, but I don't know if I have it, or whether I just have temporary blues, or whether I'm just kind of in a little bit of a natural cycle. Maybe I'm in a winter and spring's coming and that sort of thing. So the resource document is the answer to all the questions that we gather that the men ask. And then we get online, we pore over resource documents, we look at research, we look at what's already available. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So we'll refer to Beyond Blue, we'll refer to any particular organization that's already got a lot of material. Are You OK is a really, really great resource as well, particularly regarding the topic just mentioned, so that men can come out the other side. They can have a resource document which refers to podcasts that they can go and listen to on the topic, books that they can read, YouTube videos that they can watch, Instagram, Facebook, just where can they get more of these resources so that they can pour over it. Sometimes we even put up a movie, because Hollywood can sometimes have a great depiction of an issue that's going on. And that then empowers men. They're not being told what to do. They're provided with an opportunity so that they can step into, they can feel purposeful, they can feel like they've taken action towards resolving whatever issues are going on for them. They're more educated, and they're able to not just help themselves, but potentially help those around them as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's that male energy as well. It's like we don't want to be told what to do, but we like to, in our own mind, formulate some action steps. It's like, okay, I got some information, but I want to know in myself, like, what do I do here? So it's great. It's like a menu of options there, which they can say, okay, I'm going to start to listen to this podcast. I'll read this book, and I'll try this with my partner this week. Like, it's really cool. I like that. Was this the idea of it being online? Was that born out of, I'm not sure how long it's been in existence, but was it born out of COVID times?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. It was funny.
Yeah,
I was speaking yesterday. We just wrapped up recording an addiction program, and we're talking about, this exact thing. It's like, use this technology, for your benefit. And, so there's so much of technology, social media can be detrimental to our mental health, but like anything, it's how we use it, right? I can use a hammer to build a house, or I can bludgeon someone to death, right? It's how we use it. And so, it's a bit extreme, wasn't it? And so,
great analogy.
And so basically we can use this technology to form these connections, and I was speaking yesterday, there's a guy that I run a lot of trainings with, and we're to the point where we can basically read each other's minds, yet we've met in person twice ever. And it's like, we can use this technology to form connection. And yes, being in person, being able to give someone physically a hug, there is a different energy to it, and it's great. But, hey, we can, all around the country, all around the world, we can connect with other people. And it is, it is connection. It really is. You can feel it,
Well, that's one of that sense of belonging is I think really fundamentally what Man Online's providing. Myndfit's got 5 fundamentals. The second one is our 5 basic human needs, and feeling empowered, which you just spoke about. Belonging is another one. Freedom to start making different decisions and choices. Fun, learning to lighten things up, and I imagine that may be something that you monitor throughout the groups, is not letting it get too heavy and funky, but sort of trying to keep it light a bit. And survival, food, water, shelter, and knowing that we're going to be okay. So that, it sounds like the Man Online thing is really
ticking a few boxes.
Ticking on those basic human needs.
Because what happens when you do actually get a lot of men around who are forming a close connection, fun tends to become a bit of a byproduct as well. I think that's a natural, even if it is
doesn't take long to start throwing each other under the bus, does
it? Yeah, no, that's it. No, I can speak to a couple of those points. I think that it's well proven that men connect very well through humor. So we try, like, I don't think that there's any man out there that wants to come along to and spend time with other blokes, and it's 100% serious for a couple of hours, and you walk away and you go, man, that was just heavy, that kind of sucked, and now I feel like shit.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you can introduce humor, but not in a way that's a mask, because sometimes we can use humor as a hiding place rather than really expressing what's going on for us. But
it's a great defense mechanism.
Yeah, having healthy banter with each other. I'll give one example of how we've used humor in the porn session, or a session that covers porn as a topic, pornography addiction. Pornography is a tool, not we don't judge right, wrong, good or bad. That's up for the men to determine their own situation. And our expert speaker by pre-recorded video, believe it or not, is Robin Williams, the comedian. And he does a 6-minute piece that's freely available on YouTube. So we've pulled that in, and he's doing a comedy piece on pornography. And the reason that we chose that is that we canvassed a couple of the men of Man Online who openly expressed that they have a porn addiction. We got them into a separate session and said, how can we express and talk about with other men what's going on with porn? How can we convey and what can we do here for our expert speaker? And unanimously they said, well, comedy is a good way. And so we've been able to pull in fun based on the opinions of those men, and we chose a comedic piece with Robin Williams. So fun's really one of the pillars of Man Online. And Ryan, you asked where was Man Online born? Was it COVID? And the answer is yes. Men's groups have existed, I think, since men have existed. There's always been this connection, this grouping. And what I saw during COVID, and for anyone that was in lockdown for any period of time, we got very fit, and fit as in through technology. We got very skilled at using applications like Zoom or any video conferencing. And I was involved with some business networking groups. And most of these business owners were in lockdown. Many of them were not actively operating their businesses whilst in lockdown. And not one meeting would go by without a number of those members saying out loud to the group, if it wasn't for this meeting, if it wasn't for this connection with other business owners, I actually don't know where I'd be. This is the only thing that's really keeping me together. And I'd been thinking about what could I do in the men's health and wellness space for 15 years. There was a time 15 years ago that I had a very difficult period in my life. And I thought, well, how can I contribute in this space? And as those business owners were saying, if it wasn't for this gathering, I don't know where I'd be. I thought, wow, there is power in online. And some of the beauties of online, so initially I thought, well, you can't really connect online. It's not really kind of the same. And, there's a lot of kind of voices that were going off in my head about the reasons why you can't do it. And funnily enough, when I looked into the research, I was pleasantly surprised by one particular point, and that was confidentiality. That confidentiality actually increases if there is a less likelihood of men actually interacting in each other's social networks. For example, if you have something going on in your life, let's say that your relationship with your partner's going through a difficult phase, is that something you can talk to your brother-in-law about? Probably not, right? And so having being able to come online with because there's no geographical boundaries. We have men from Queensland connecting with New South Wales and Victoria and Tassie, and sometimes even men who are overseas. So being that there's no geographical boundaries means that they're really unlikely to actually have in-person social interaction with their social groups. So it's kind of like, that instance where when you're talking to a stranger, you find that you're actually really open and honest and candid. Whereas sometimes with a close friend, you might not be as open and honest. So therefore, once it clicked for me that confidentiality is increased, once it clicked for me that men who are in rural and regional areas, the stats are alarmingly higher for those men in terms of health and mental health and suicide, and it's terrible stats. So I thought, wow, okay, we just got to be online, and we have. That's not to say that we don't meet up for a dinner or go karting or those types of things on occasion as a group, get together and do events. But it's founded in online, and it's founded in online to increase confidentiality, to maximize the reach for rural and regional areas as well.
Yeah,
interesting. Sorry, Hassan. It's just I'm heading out to Boulia next week, which is 3 hours south of Mount Isa, and for that specific reason is that in those regions, it's interesting. We've got little Myndfit hubs, sort of Swan Hill and Dubbo and Mount Isa, and because the blokes out there, as you say, have too much time on their hands, too much time to think, I suppose, sitting in a tractor or riding horses or whatever. They get in their own heads, but yeah, there is that disconnection. So I'll definitely be raising the awareness around Man Online and suggesting that the blokes out there look into that as a resource.
Yeah, because it's an addition. It's not like people think, well, it's going to replace the physical aspect, but it's not. It's an addition for most people. We find, like Nick today, like we might have a support call with our students, and a couple of them are in bed. not feeling the best. And if our support call or meeting was 5 minutes down the road, they wouldn't have, there's no way they would have made it physically. And so say this today, let's say this was we're in a support group and Nick was really struggling with something, then you're going to make it online, whereas you're not going to make it if it's online. So there's more support in your corner in that instance. So I think being able to use online that way it's super powerful. And like you said, people are in rural areas, they're not going to, commit to traveling a certain amount of distance, twice a month. Most of them won't anyway, for their mental and emotional health. So I think it breaks down many barriers and walls, and the efficacy of it for me personally, I think it was 2018, because I'd known people doing some Skype sessions and that kind of thing back then. And I'm like, no, not the same, won't work, and then, because we did trauma therapy at our center, and a guy from the States, I'll never forget it, he jumped on Skype for a chat, and I'm like, this guy needs some work here. So I'm like, all right, because in our center, we'd have, a diffuser on, special music on, like really setting the scene and everything. This dude was in his fucking basement, no music, shitty internet connection. Like it was, and so I'm like, all right, let's just see how this goes. Next thing is, processing a trauma from his childhood, crying, snot and everything, and had this incredible experience. And I'm like, maybe online could work, right? And so that's why we weren't hesitant at all to go online. We went online actually just a few months before COVID kind of happened. And it's we're all online now, and it's incredible efficacy, but it doesn't, like I said, it's an addition for people to their life that I think is in combination with that actual human to human contact. I think it's so important. And just one other point I wanted to make you touched on humor and banter. And I heard a while ago that, men use humor and banter to test the trust in relationship with other men. So if you see a class, like if you saw me and my mates who I've been mates with for 20 years, and you had a camera on us when we're having a few beers and talking, you'd be like, fuck, they're saying some really wrong shit, right, to each other. But the reason we say that, like if me and Nick caught up for a beer and just us two and we weren't recording a podcast, you'd be like, there'd be a lot of stuff in it that was quite wrong, so to speak. But that's how men test the trust in a relationship. I could say something to my close friend that if we were walking down the street and some stranger on the other side of the road said it, we'd go over and confront them, because that's not right. But men do that to test the boundaries. So there's trust in the relationship. So I think it's really important for men to know, we live in a culture now where everyone gets offended by things, but that's how men do connect on the level of humor.
I'd add to that, Ryan, too. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that testing the trust also is a strengthening. It's strengthening our core. It strengthens, I guess, our resistance as well. So yeah, there's a lot of banter that goes on between blokes, and I think it's a very, very natural component. It's not something that I want to see shut down. There's certainly, we do live in a PC world, and there's a time and a place for it. And I think that the opportunity for men to be able to express that in an environment that is safe, that is okay for them to do that, is a very healthy and good thing.
Yeah. You mentioned there briefly before that, you went through a bit of a tough time. I think you said about 15 years ago. Is that at the start of the conversation, you said that there was a time in your life when you kind of wish you had the space, to open up and didn't? I'm wondering, maybe, did you feel maybe ashamed? Did you know you needed to speak up, but no, you didn't have the place? Like, where was your awareness at when you were going through your kind of dark period?
Yeah. Did I feel ashamed? Yes. So for me, there was a combination of events, nothing in isolation that you'd think would bother anyone, really. A bit of business stuff that was going on, some difficulties in my relationship. I wasn't feeling great about myself. I put on a few kilos. It was just this kind of cluster of events that were going on. I was not in my own business at the time. I was working for somebody else, and the final straw for me was that I actually lost my job. And cutting a long story short, it was an unfair dismissal, which I eventually was successful in demonstrating down the track. But at the time, I felt ashamed because I lost my job. I felt the pressure of, I was building a home, And I was like, shit, suddenly, am I going to be able to afford this? Am I going to be out of a job, out of a house, had relationship difficulties. I was creating this unrealistic future for myself that was going to see me basically huddled in a ball in the corner with nothing after I'd worked very hard, very long for what I had. Again, not anything in isolation that would be so much so that it would render me kind of ineffective and useless. But I went down I kind of spiraled, and it was a downward spiral. And I suffered depression, and I started to have thoughts of, gee, you know what? I think the world would be better off without me. And once I started having those thoughts, I did reach out. At one point, I went to the emergency department of the Austin Hospital, and I had a conversation. But outside of that, anybody in my world, my family, my friends, my colleagues, anybody who knew me would what they would see was this mask of everything's looking just fine. I'm okay.
Which is, it's where a lot of the shame gets bred as well. And so many men identify, like Nick mentioned earlier, about having to be the rock. Men identify as being a provider. And so it's a big one. Men lose a job. It's not about losing the job. It's about part of our identity feeling like it's falling away or dying. And it's like, well, if I'm not that, what am I? And a lot of men go, well, I'm nothing. And this shame is compounded.
You can hear in that a lot of the work that we talk about here, James, is the ego, and how problematic the ego is. And the ego creates this identity. I am this, I am that, I have to be this, I must be that. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not enough. And, you know, the so many people just expect their minds to function and perform well and to create pleasant experiences for them. But no one's really training the minds. No one's really doing the work to get their minds in shape. And the whole thing about everyone has mental health, and it's just, I'd love to learn from you, like the blokes that you're listening to. Are they starting to understand that when you need to go to the gym to get a resilient and fit and healthy body that's resistant to disease and illness, we need to strengthen the mind and use the challenges and adversity, you know, Stoic philosophy, the obstacle is the way, you know, to learn how to be more solution oriented and to work through things instead of just being so affected by everything. Are you noticing an understanding in who you're talking with?
I'm noticing an increase in understanding. We do survey our men from time to time so that we've got some data, both just their verbal answers and some questionnaires that they've filled out that would indicate that that being a part of a men's group, not specifically Man Online, just being a part of a men's group, increases the likelihood that they would ask for help when needed. It increases their awareness of what might be going on for them and how they can go about and reach out and get help and resources. But what I would say is, I'm going to call it a difficulty. I'd say that one of the difficulties that exists is that unless you value personal growth, unless you value, you mentioned the obstacle is the way, right? Unless you value the courage of going through something that's difficult. I'm reminded of that. You've probably heard this many times before, and I'm sure your listeners have heard this in terms of a metaphor. And there's a young man who walks by a house, and he looks over at the house and he can see this dog in pain. And the young man says to the old man who's on the balcony, he says, "Why is your dog in pain?" And the old man says, "Oh, he's lying on a nail." And the young man's kind of confused. He says, "Well, why doesn't the dog get off the nail? And the old man says, because the dog's not in enough pain.
Yeah.
And I think for some men, they're not in enough pain and they don't recognize or they don't appreciate. And I don't want to make anyone wrong because I think that we've all fallen into that situation. And I can point to me myself.
It's just nature, though. It's not wrong. It's just nature, isn't it?
It's not making anyone wrong. And I guess until an individual man makes a decision for himself to do, let's call it the work, to step in and do some work, then he's probably just going to be sitting on that nail. And that nail might get bigger and it might bleed more and maybe he feels helpless and feels like he can't do anything about that. Until there's this mental shift, an increase in value of growth and an increase in, I want to get this resolved and actually do the work, kind of like going to the gym, right? You're not going to get great biceps in day one. So forming the habit.
Ryan did.
In one day, Well, love to know what your hack is. But forming the habit and ritual of figuring out or just covering different topics, working out what's going on, increasing your awareness, making a decision to want to do something about it. I loved your 5 things there. Feeling empowered, belonging, freedom, fun, survival. It's kind of like a life transition almost, where you have this values reevaluation, and you say, I don't want to live like that anymore, or I want to prepare myself for life's inevitable setbacks, so that when that happens, I'm ready. I'm supported with other blokes. I'm mentally fit, which I imagine is why your organization's Myndfit. I think it's a beautiful name.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Nick, that makes so much sense.
I know, right? I never joined those dots. It's, for us, James, it's just about common sense. We're just coming at this from such that simplistic level, no jargon, not clinical. And if you've got a body, you've got physical health, you've got a mind, you've got mental health, you've got to exercise it and train it. There's certain things you're going to do. But it's I guess for us, it's about, you talk about the metaphor of the dog and the nail, and another way to describe it is that change only occurs when the discomfort of where we are becomes greater than the discomfort involved in moving. So, there's a cauldron full of water and someone's sitting in it that's surrounded by glass, broken glass. And they look out and they go, oh, no, that's going to hurt. There's nice things over there, but that's going to hurt. So I'm going to stay in this cauldron because it's nice. But the fire gets lit and slowly it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And they've got to come to this point where, oh, shit, I've got to jump out and then run across the glass and get to the safety. But the heat that they experience, the boiling water, we call that unnecessary suffering. And that's unfortunately, there's my observation is that not unfortunately, my observation is there's 2 types of people in the world: those that can look forward and go, there's some doors I don't want to open, there's some things down there that I don't want to experience. But that's probably 20% of the population. The majority, the 80% of us, wait until we're near burnout or breakdown, or we're in enough suffering before we then go, I better do something about this. I need to change.
But that's summarized. That is,
sorry, you go, James.
Inspiration or desperation.
Yeah.
But we spoke about, early on how awareness is, it's only the first step and the things that come after that. But this is where the awareness piece is so important, because most people have normalized the way that they're feeling. So the dog on the nail is normalized. It's like, all other dogs have got their version of the nail, so it's okay. But if that dog has the awareness that, hey, being on that nail's not okay, you can just get off it, then it might take action to do that. I noticed, about 5 years ago, maybe, a lot more people seeking help were kind of, I use the analogy of like most people we would see at the center, if they were a car, they like just barely rolled into the mechanics, like missing a wheel, windows broken, smashed everywhere, light hanging off, saying, fix me. right?
But then we started to the keys and say,
make this look good. Give it a new paint job and it'll be okay. But what I started noticing is a lot more people like bringing their car in saying, hey, maybe these few warning lights are coming on. Can we get that looked at? So people would come in and go, look, I haven't got a full-blown addiction. I'm holding down a job, but my relationship with cocaine and alcohol, I can kind of see where it's going if I keep going down this path. So I think, that shift has come from the awareness piece. So Paddy the Baddie Pimblett, other people, sports people tend to be a good one for men to look to. Might make them realize that there's a lot of, as Nick would say, unnecessary suffering going on. We did a talk last week on anxiety, and it's like most people have this like hum of anxiety in the background. It's there all the time. And like the cauldron, it's been there for so long that it's become normalized. So we need to understand that, no, that's having a 3 out of 10 anxiety all the time that may peak in certain situations. That's not normal. We can be better than that. And once you have people experience, even if it's for a minute or two, what it's like without that anxiety, it's like the air conditioner that's been on your whole life. And you only know it's been on when it gets turned off. And you're like, oh, that thing's been on the whole time. And it's that way with a lot of what we go through mentally and emotionally, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. I loved your analogy with the car. And I think that a lot of perhaps what our job is as advocates of men's mental health and well-being is to talk about preventative maintenance, because most of us, not all, but most of us will take our vehicle in for servicing before it breaks down. We'll get our aircon, repaired or checked before it breaks down, our refrigeration, that sort of thing. And for men, that makes a lot of sense. Like you'd say to your mates, well, you're an idiot. Of course your car was going to break down. You had, 6 warning lights going off for 3 months. So moving to a position of preventative maintenance as an analogy for men to get together in groups, to come to Myndfit, to reach out to organizations. Doesn't really matter what it is that you do. There's so many men-centric organizations out there that they're run by men, they're for men, that they talk about men's stuff. They do it in a way that really taps into the research. That's for us blokes. Just keep it really simple. We don't need a lot of jargon and that sort of thing. Just get together. There's organizations that just do walks and talks. So there's, for every man on the planet, there is some kind of organization, whether it's Men's Shed, a men's walk and talk, a men's group, an organization like yours, to get involved with, so that they're prepared for the inevitable. We're all going to go through adversity at some point in time. We're going to lose a job, or we're going to lose loved ones, or we're going to have a financial hit, or some kind of health issue is going to come up and kick us in the arse. And if we can be forged and prepared, research will show we're far more likely to be able to transition that period well, rather than turning to an addiction or it's flight, fight, freeze, right? We're going to choose one of those probably. And in most instances, it ends up messy and in carnage. And those of us who've been through it and come out the other side, we've traversed the tunnel and we've found our light at the end of the tunnel. We can look back and we can do our very best to help to educate other men to say, preventative. Don't wait till it's too late. And we do our very best with that.
We use Buddhist philosophy to underpin a lot of the work we do, and the first sort of part of that is to live is to suffer. And once we get our head around that life's not perfect. It is perfect because everything happens for a reason and it's all happening exactly as it needs to. But men humans tend to operate so irrationally and like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And you can hear the ego involved in that. You can hear that the second noble truth is that the source of all suffering is attachment. And so we're helping the people differentiate between necessary suffering, like life happening, and then unnecessary suffering, which is where your mind starts conjuring, creating all these terrible illusions of, and that's where the suffering needs medicating. That's where addiction comes in. That's where we start gambling or going outside of our relationships or whatever. But it's just an interesting way in which you can really. There's something we use. We got my Myndfit headquarters got broken into last year, or the year before, or can't even remember when. And I walked in there, and I remember, because of the training that I'd done mentally, I just sat in that observation and I didn't react to it. And I just went, it's not outside the realms of possibility or probability that a commercial or any property can get broken into, because there are people in the world who break into buildings. And just that tiny little mental exercise was enough to keep me, and then all of a sudden I went into gratitude for the fact that they weren't vandals and they didn't smash everything up, and they didn't, they stole 3 bits of artwork. And so I didn't take it personally. That didn't happen to me. They didn't do this to me. I didn't dramatize it or need to run off and jump on Facebook, oh, these fuckheads broke in, and let's get a lynch mob together. And like, we can do such a better job, 90% better of looking after ourselves and taking care of our own emotional state. But once again, people are lacking the tools, they're lacking the knowledge, they're lacking the awareness, they're lacking the understanding, they're lacking the equipment to self-manage and self-regulate in times where things, when the storms roll in and adversity happens.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing you saying there, Nick, is really being able to step into, I guess, a perspective of maturity and how do we have good judgment? Well, we have a lot of bad judgment, and we make mistakes, and we learn as we go. And on that journey, we're able to arm ourselves with more awareness, more skills, more tools, more appreciation and gratitude, which is a really beautiful point you just made. And it's the antidote for. I think the antidote for anxiety is appreciation and gratitude and perspective, and being able to just kind of feel grounded in that. And
underneath that, James, it's trust. We talk about anxiety can only exist in the absence of trust. So the antithesis for us in Myndfit is that trust, when that's what keeps you grounded. That creates those feelings of gratitude and whatever. But it's just this inherent, innate trust that I'm okay. There's nothing. There's no ninjas in here. I am safe. I am secure. I trust that I can manage and get through this and move on with my day, and that everything's gonna. It's all about keeping it in perspective, and that can only occur when there's that deep sense of trust in the self, and that only comes through conditioning and doing the work, as you said earlier.
And keep doing it. We've used this example before. It's like I go and do a 12-week body challenge and I lose all this weight and get a 6-pack and feel great, and then go, all right, I'm fit for life. And then just stop working out and just eat garbage from then on. People do that with their minds. So it takes that constant preventative measures like we've spoken about. And it's just, I really want to ram home the point, so that Nick, in his example, didn't walk into the break-in and then all of a sudden add that to the stress load that was already there. Because that's what we do, right? We just keep adding to the stress load because we can't trust, like Nick said, and we can't accept what's happening. And so all of a sudden we get to a point where the stress level is so high that the natural human inclination is, I have to escape. Alcohol, drugs, affairs, whatever it is, we will find a way to escape if that stress load's too high. So it's managing that and keeping on top of it.
You spoke about the maintenance as well, and so we run a 12-week and 12-month initial program at Myndfit to do this work and train people how to get their minds in shape. But what was interesting, that's all we had, and until clients started coming to me and saying, hey, I want to keep doing the work. I don't know how to keep doing it on my own. And so we're like, oh, shit. So then we had to create a maintenance program where once a month or once every 3 months, they come in and touch base, and it just keeps them on track. natural regression is a part of our human experience. So we are going to revert to the old wiring or the old ways occasionally. So yeah, it's great to have something in place for people to I guess we're reactively helping them. We're getting them out of, or helping them to get themselves out of the blues or the mental struggles that they're in. But then equipping them and then going, right, you got this. Just come back and tell me what you're doing with this. And they're like, oh, I can actually, and that freedom, that liberation, it's beautiful to watch people, really take that and run with it.
Yeah, we just need the reminder sometimes, don't we? We just need these reminders.
Got this.
Yeah. James, I've got one more question before we wrap up. And Nick, if you have any, obviously shoot them. Nick, you've done amazing today. You haven't wilted at all.
Well, I'd say you have 0% help in that. I'd say just James and how interesting he is and the work he's doing has helped me here and got me through. So
it sounds like Polly or Daisy are on the bed there with you as well. So
yeah, Daisy's Polly's trying to get
up. James, what's the future for Man Online? Are you at the minute looking to just grow it, get more groups going? Is there any other ideas sort of brewing there? What does the future look like?
Yes. So the future is growth, and we'll go about that two ways. The men who are involved, who've been involved over the last few years, are starting to step into facilitator mode. So our groups are run with a facilitator. So the more facilitators that we have, the more men that we're able to attract into our organisation. And the feedback from the men is that this is really powerful, really important work. So there's no way that we could not want to continue and grow down this path. I think that a lot of that growth will be organic. When men have a good experience, they share that with others. They talk about it, and you probably have experienced this yourself in your own organisation. There's some initial resistance for men to want to kind of do anything that sounds or feels like self-help. There's still a little bit of a stigma around that. So testimonials from the men who've been involved certainly helps to attract other men in. Some other components of Man Online, other than just the men's group that meets twice a month for 90 minutes and talks about a specific topic, is that we'll have weekends where we might have 10 expert speakers that come in. So in June, for International Men's Health Week, as an example, we covered 5 domains: health, wealth, relationships, business, and community. And we had 2 expert speakers, some of them, big names, some of them local, that really spoke to each of those domains and was able to give men advice and ideas and awareness. And the beauty of an event like that is, in Man Online, the men's groups are 6 to 8 men. But because it's a network of online men's groups, the wider community is actually many, many, many dozens and sometimes even hundreds of men. And so for our, we called it the Man event, and that happened in June for International Men's Health Week. We had 150 men who were able to attend that online 2 days, 10 speakers, 5 different topics. So there's a lot of opportunities like that. We hope one day perhaps do a podcast. I don't know. Do you think that's a good idea?
Absolutely.
Okay. So podcast.
Well, when you have the space, when you have the space, I think it's kind of one of the last things to do, but it's definitely worth it. Everyone listens to podcasts now, so
Oh, shout out to Alistair and Charters Towers too. Speaking of podcasts, it's amazing. It's amazing the people that reach it, that listen, and we just had a wonderful interaction yesterday, and this lady was saying how much her husband loves listening to it whenever something's happening. It'll be a go-to resource for him. So
beautiful.
Yeah,
well, hello, Alistair. I think the key message in that too is making the content accessible, easy, convenient, for the way that men like to be able to receive that information. So we're constantly asking the men of Man Online, how do you like to receive your information? Are we giving you too much, too little? Is it in the way that you want to receive it? Is there a different format? And of course, being online, we're able to tap into a lot of multimedia, and of course, there's private groups and all sorts of stuff. So we're constantly asking for the men. I'm a huge advocate of innovation. So you could expect that Man Online will evolve with the times and be very responsive to the needs of the men of our organisation and the wider community.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of technology, as well as having those options. And I think audio is the big one. I mean, for us, we run a lot of practitioner trainings, and we have their video format mainly. We'll do a workbook and transcription, but also the audio download. And we find that just to be so powerful, because especially men, they want to be consuming their content whilst they're at the gym, or whilst they're walking the dog, or whilst they're in the car on their commute to and from work, or whatever it is. And we find that that's just a really good way. So it doesn't just have to be podcast, but the way we deliver any content through audio form, it's pretty easy to do, and it means that the men will consume the content, whilst they're doing whatever they're doing. So I know for me, like whether it's the gym or whatever it is, I've always got a podcast or an audio book going on. So yeah, no, I think it's great.
You're gonna make it palatable, though, don't you? You're gonna make it taste nice, so they keep coming back for more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then we often say, like, obviously, if it's a video one and we're showing some sort of example, but like you need to watch the video. But obviously, the audio is there to listen to again and again, reaffirm, what people are going through. So love what you're doing, James. I'm a big advocate already, and we've only just met. Where can people get in touch? Where's the best place for them to find Man Online?
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure and privilege to be on the show. I feel really honored. It's wonderful to meet you both as well. For any of your listeners that are interested in Man Online, they come straight to the website, which is simply manonline.com.au. And on the web page, the top right-hand corner, there's a big button that says attend a free pilot session. And that's an opportunity for anyone who's interested in having a look at a men's group, obligation free. It's kind of like wanting to learn karate. First lesson's free. Come along and see what it's all about. And an expert facilitator will guide you through what a Man Online session looks like, show you under the hood, so to speak. And other than that, just a Google search of Man Online will find any socials or how it is that you like to connect and follow.
Brilliant.
Well, let us know if there's anything Ryan and I can do to assist and help, and if there's anything we can offer in terms of knowledge or experience or whatever, we'd love to do so.
Maybe like if there's a special one, like, how to get over the man flu, something like that. Like Nick would be a wonderful expert speaker.
Yeah.
Lived experience practitioner.
Right in my wheelhouse.
Done a great job, and a huge advocate of collaboration, and thank you for the offer. I will take it up, and likewise, if there's anything that I can do to help support either of you, your audience, Myndfit, anything in any way, or any connections that I have, please consider me a source and a resource also.
Numbers going on speed dial.
Thank you, James. Nico, thank you as always. And thank you most of all to everybody tuning into the show. We hope you took some value out of this. Check out Man Online, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, boys. Alistair, your wife loves you. There's also her. Just tell his wife loves him very much.
Loved. You are loved.
It's a beautiful
We love
thing.
you too, Alistair.
Oh, yeah.
See you all next week. Peace out.
Peace.